This is exactly what, by the way, the rest of the G20 countries are all doing at this point. Like Europe has actually already passed this legislation called MiCA. Singapore, Australia, Brazil, Canada, they're all in various stages of doing this. So the US is actually kind of behind on this process, which gets to some of the dysfunction happening in DC. But I believe it'll come together. There's political will, and there's 52 million Americans who now actually want to elect pro-crypto candidates that understand you have to balance like the innovation potential of this with protecting consumers. So we need a comprehensive framework. We can't have a politicized SEC just trying to shut it down or something.
Right.
Okay, so what should that framework look like? So some areas of the law around this are actually already clear. I don't think they need an update. So for instance, anti-money laundering rules, the way that sanctions are enforced, things, you can create like a trust company or get money transmission licenses. These things can be useful already for all types of financial service companies, including crypto companies. The part of the law that's really the least clear is what we touched on earlier. It's which of these are commodities, which of these are securities. Assuming we're going to continue to have two federal regulators that, we need to sort of clearly delineate. Sometimes something could start as a security but become a commodity over time once it's sufficiently decentralized. And those are really the kind of key questions that need to get this so that we don't have occasionally a politicized regulator try to weaponize the lack of clarity. That's what the Congress needs to do. And I should say there's actually two bills going through the House committees that got bipartisan support already. And I think some of those may come to a full House floor vote maybe this year. If that goes well, they could go to the Senate next year. So we along with a bunch of people in the industry are trying to help make that happen.
Bitcoin is slowly but surely going to take over the world. That's the message out from CEO and co-founder of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong. The once niche topic of cryptocurrency is experiencing a massive surge in interest, with a growing number of individuals wanting to capitalize on its potential. In his latest interview, Brian broke down why 2024 is going to be a watershed year for not only Bitcoin, but crypto in general. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video where Brian breaks down why cryptocurrency becoming mainstream is not a possibility but an inevitability. Also guys, if you want to stay most up to date on the crypto world, I send out a daily 5-minute crypto newsletter that covers expert predictions, on-chain data breakdowns, and breaking news, all for free. Click the first link in the description, enter your email, and join over 50,000 others to become a better crypto investor right now. Now here's Brian Armstrong on why Bitcoin and cryptocurrency becoming mainstream is only a matter of time.
Once you have the reserve currency status, your temptation is to abuse it and to inflate, and eventually you go too far and you lose trust in the system. But you can see that America is still, I think, the strongest country in the world, and it's the best place to do business and everything. And I think there's nowhere else I'd rather be. But you can see some of the strain on the system. And I do think that the best way to ensure the survival of the dollar and making sure that that's a source of soft power for the U.S. We need a digitized dollar. The way to ensure the survival of America is to ensure that the currency is strong and we continue this American experiment. I actually think Bitcoin and crypto is really essential to that. Well, I'd say it's actually grown a lot since 2014, if that's when it was written, I think. But at that time there was probably only maybe single-digit millions of Americans who had used crypto at that time. There's now about 52 million, and so by the way, globally, I think it's probably about 400 million or so people have used it. So oftentimes people go through. I think partly that criticism is correct. By the way, let me just acknowledge that.
I think you can't buy. Nobody pays for groceries with crypto or tanks up with crypto, right? Okay.
Yeah. So everyday items, especially kind of in retail merchants in the United States, they're not going to be the earliest adopters of this. The more early adopters of it are people. It's basically digital payments, so online, and then it's in emerging markets. And I will say, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I actually would have thought we had made more progress to now. Still, I don't want to fully acknowledge the point that it's very small, because I think getting 400 million people in the world to use anything is actually like a really great step if you zoom out 10 years and look at the trajectory of the internet kind of through the 80s and 90s. And so people start often using crypto. They want to buy a piece of it to sort of, hey, this is interesting. I might want to own a piece of the future. It's a little bit like when domain names first came out in the internet, and some, people
buy
like
them up for fun.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe this will be valuable someday.
Right.
That was kind of the early days. It's often still how people get their feet wet. Then we saw people start to use crypto for payments, and especially with U.S. dollar-backed stablecoins and what's called layer 2, which is allowing payments to be faster and cheaper. we've started to see actually quite a bit more activity in the payment space, especially in emerging markets, which I can talk about if you want. And then more recently, we've seen people start to use crypto for a few things. One of them is called NFTs, which is essentially artists who are trying to publish their work in a digital way that they can have a relationship with their fans directly for monetization. Things like decentralized social media have just gotten started, where it's censorship resistant, so you're not going to get censored by big tech or something, but it's also a way where you can actually monetize social media, and so directly, and not have ads put on top of it by the platform. So anyway, there's a lot of utility that we can talk about that's emerging. I think if you make an analogy to the internet had to do a few things. First, people don't remember this. The internet started off with just IP addresses, and those are kind of machine readable, but they're not human readable. So we needed domain names to translate to IP addresses to get that to be kind of human readable, and email addresses and things like that we could remember, not just a series of numbers. Crypto, again, started off with something kind of like IP addresses, like Bitcoin addresses just look like a random string of characters. We now have things that are more human readable, and I can talk about what some of those are. So we had to make the names and addresses human readable. The second thing we had to do was actually get it to be more scalable. So the internet, remember, it kind of went through dial-up to broadband.
Right.
And you could load like a page of text or something on dial-up, but on broadband you could start to have more interactive applications. Crypto is going through its own kind of dial-up to broadband moment, which is, in crypto, it's called going from layer 1 to layer 2. And then the other big thing that needed to get the internet to broad adoption was the web browser, right? Average people, they didn't really want to be on a command line, typing in commands. Once there was a web browser, anybody could use it. They didn't know underneath they were using these internet protocols like HTTP and SMTP, but they didn't know that. They just want to click the link. And so there was this moment with Netscape and the early browsers that kind of opened up the aperture of how many people could use the internet without even caring about the underlying technology. And so crypto is, I think it's yet to maybe have that moment where how do we make this easy and accessible to a broad range of people? And that's part of what Coinbase is trying to do with our self-custodial wallet, which I can talk about if you want. But anyway, I think those three pieces are going to probably, when we look back on crypto in 5-10 years, we'll say those were kind of similar moments that led to, okay, eventually we got to a couple billion people using it every day. My point of view is that there are some, crypto's, like I said, it's a technology that can be used to update the financial system. I think that can be used to update crypto commodities. There's a lot that probably should be commodities. I think it could be interesting for crypto securities too. It could make how securities are traded and capital formation a lot more efficient, but there needs to be a process to actually go register these securities with the SEC, which in my view they don't have at all today. And so it should be both. Crypto could create interesting commodities and securities. In the absence of this clarity, again, we took a very conservative approach at Coinbase. We evaluated thousands of different crypto assets. We rejected, I think, roughly 90% of them. We said, it's a little unclear. But these 10%, they very clearly fit into what a commodity, how it would be defined. And we worked with outside counsel, and we had committees opine on this, and we wrote all kinds of paper.
You spent money on it.
Stacks of paper for every. So yeah, I think we showed a lot of good faith effort. And so, for the SEC to come in and say, well, these are all securities, and we'll say, well, how did you get to that conclusion? Which ones and why? And it was we were just met with silence. I think we met with them 30 different times over a period of a year, never got a single piece of feedback about them. And so it was really like the message I was kind of hearing from them was basically shut down the whole thing, or you'll get an enforcement action. And then the rules were never clear. And so it was kind of an easy decision to go to court because, I think that we're right on the facts and we're right on the law. And the only other alternative was to kind of stop doing the business.
So I want to come to the question of regulation apart from the SEC in a moment. But you've got this case making its way through the court. It feels to me, and according to the reading I did, other people agree, this feels like the kind of thing that could go all the way to the Supreme Court. So do you have some notion of how long it will take to get a resolution in this case? This could go on for years, it feels like to me.
Yeah, well, so it depends. We recently filed a motion to dismiss. It's rare for things to get dismissed this early in the case, but I think people looking at other judges that have ruled on other cases at this moment, they're kind of saying, wow, I think Coinbase has a really good chance of winning this. So whether we win it kind of earlier or we win it later, I feel pretty confident we're going to win it. It'd be interesting if it went to the Supreme Court. We'd probably have to see different opinions in different districts, but I think under this Supreme Court, that actually would be a good outcome for us. I think we like our chances even better if it went there. So the SEC probably doesn't want that. I do think over the next few years we'll see a lot more clarity, and the reason is that we have a couple horses in this race. So one is the court case. One way to get clarity is actually just to create case law, and in some ways it doesn't even matter what the outcome of the court case is.
So there's Brian Armstrong revealing how Bitcoin can become mainstream sooner than most expect. If this content resonates with you, don't hesitate to subscribe and like the video. Your engagement helps continue to bring you insightful and timely content. Anyway guys, hope you all enjoyed today's video and that provided you with some value. I'll see you all on the next one, and as always, all the best.